Be Me Rowan, 26 years old, working as a journalist for an online media company. It's not the big legacy paper I dreamed of, but it pays the bills and the office has free kombucha, so whatever. My real goal has always been to write things that matter, to actually make a difference, not just churn out listicles about the top 10 avocado toast spots. The place is run by this woman, Meredith. She's all about analytics, engagement metrics, and whatever buzzwords are trending on LinkedIn that week. She's not a bad boss, just corporate. Cares more about the click-through rate than the content. My desk is near this guy, Elliot. He's the quiet type. Does these long, deeply researched pieces that get a lot of respect, but not a lot of clicks. The kind of stuff that wins awards nobody's heard of. He's fine, I guess, never says much, just types away, drinks his black coffee, and minds his own business. Kinda boring, honestly. So the story starts on some random gray afternoon, maybe a Tuesday. We're all crammed into the main conference room for the weekly numbers meeting. Meredith is at the head of the table, pointing at a PowerPoint slide with a big, sad-looking red arrow pointing down. Our user engagement is flat, stagnant. People are clicking but not staying. She's going on about needing something fresh, something disruptive, a new voice. Everyone is just staring at their notepads, trying to look busy and avoid her gaze. This is my chance. I'd been thinking about this idea for weeks, turning it over in my mind. I raise my hand. All eyes turn to me. Even Elliot looks up from his laptop for a second. I stand up and just lay it all out. I tell Meredith we're not being bold enough. We're still playing by the old rules, written by old men. I pitch her a new dedicated column, an entire series. I call it Her Story. The premise is simple, and in my opinion, revolutionary. For every major issue, the economy, healthcare, workplace dynamics, relationships, we would only present the female perspective. No both sides, no false balance. I explain that for centuries, the default perspective in media has been male. The objective view has always been a man's view. To correct that imbalance, you can't just add a token female voice. You have to completely center the female experience. For a while, you have to actively remove the male voice, just to let the other one be heard clearly for the first time. The room is dead silent. I can feel some of the older guys in the room stiffen. One of them, an old editor who's been in the business since the invention of the printing press, clears his throat. He starts talking about journalistic integrity, about the duty to present a complete picture, that what I'm describing isn't journalism, it's activism. I look him right in the eye. I tell him that the complete picture has always been a myth, a tool used to maintain the status quo. What I'm proposing is just a different kind of truth, a necessary one. Meredith is quiet, just watching me, tapping a pen on her chin. I can see the gears turning in her head. She's not thinking about journalistic ethics. She's calculating the potential for clicks, shares, and controversy. The old editor shakes his head and mutters something about being glad he's retiring soon. I don't care. He's a dinosaur. His time is over. Meredith smiles. It's a thin, calculating smile, but it's a yes. She tells me it's bold, it's fresh, and she's giving me a trial run. 3 articles. If they perform well, we make it a permanent feature. I walk out of that meeting feeling 10 feet tall. Elliot catches my eye as I sit down. He gives a small, unreadable nod and goes back to his work. I can't tell if it's approval or just acknowledgement. Doesn't matter. I spend the next week working on my first piece. I decide to go for the jugular, the workplace. The title is Career Ceiling: How Male Bosses Unconsciously Stifle Female Ambition. I don't even bother trying to interview any male managers. What would be the point? They'd just deny it. They'd talk about merit and performance reviews, all the coded language they use to justify their biases. Instead, I put out an anonymous call for stories on a few private online groups for professional women. My inbox is flooded within hours. Hundreds of stories. Women who were passed over for promotions in favor of less qualified men. Women whose ideas were ignored in meetings, only to be praised when a man repeated them. Women who were told to be less aggressive or more of a team player. It's a goldmine of raw, unfiltered experience. I pick the most powerful, most relatable stories and weave them together into a single, devastating narrative. I write about the subtle patterns of toxic masculinity in the office, the way it creates an environment where women have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Before I submit it, I send a draft to a few of my activist friends. The feedback is immediate and glowing. They tell me it's brave, it's necessary, it's the article they've been waiting for. Their validation feels like a shot of adrenaline. I hit submit and send the article to Meredith. An hour later, I get a one-word email back from her. Perfect. The article goes live on a Monday morning. For the first few hours, it's quiet. Then, it starts. The first wave is pure positivity. It starts getting shared in those same professional women's groups. My friends are all posting it, calling me a visionary. The comment section on the website is full of women saying, "This is my life. Thank you for writing this. I feel so seen." By lunchtime, the traffic to the site has broken a daily record. Meredith walks by my desk with a huge grin and gives me a thumbs up. Then the second wave hits. The backlash. It starts on Twitter. Men calling the article a biased hit piece, demanding statistics, demanding proof. They completely miss the point. The lived experiences of women are the proof. The comment section on the site gets ugly. We have to have 2 moderators working full-time just to delete the worst of it. The arguments are the same tired lines about not all men and accusing me of misandry. It's exhausting, but in a weird way, it's also validating. Their anger just proves my point. They can't handle a narrative they don't control. The controversy just fuels the fire. More people are clicking, more people are sharing. The article is officially viral. At the end of the day, Meredith calls me into her office. She shows me the numbers, engagement through the roof. New subscriptions are pouring in. She tells me her story column is no longer a trial run. It's a permanent weekly feature, and I'm in charge of it. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I did it. I was right. My next few articles follow the same formula. The mental load. Why women are burning out in relationships. I write about the invisible labor that women do in the home, the emotional management, the planning, the constant remembering of birthdays and appointments. Again, I only use female sources. Again, it goes viral. Again, the comments are a war zone. The men in the comments try to talk about their own contributions, about working long hours, about the pressure they feel to be providers. I just see it as whataboutism, a desperate attempt to recenter themselves in a conversation that isn't about them. My little corner of the internet is growing. I have a dedicated following of women who hang on my every word. They call themselves Rowan's Readers. It's a bit cringe, but also kind of amazing. My activist friends treat me like a hero. We go out for drinks, and they tell me I'm the most important voice in modern journalism. I'm starting to believe it. I feel powerful. I feel like I have a purpose. I barely notice what anyone else in the office is doing. Elliot published some big investigation into supply chains or something. It gets a few respectful nods in the industry press, but it's a dud online. No one's angrily tweeting about supply chains. It just reinforces my belief that his kind of journalism is obsolete, safe, boring, toothless. I'm the future. The real turning point came with my third big article. I decided to tackle a really sensitive topic: divorce. I wanted to write about the economic devastation that divorce causes for women. The title I came up with was "Starting Over at Zero: The Financial Punishment of Leaving a Bad Marriage." I spent weeks on it. I interviewed single mothers who were struggling to make ends meet, women who had to give up their homes, women whose ex-husbands were hiding assets to avoid paying what they owed. Their stories were heartbreaking. I poured all of their pain and anger onto the page. I portrayed their ex-husbands exactly as they had been described to me: manipulative, financially abusive, and callous. In my narrative, there was no ambiguity. The men were the villains. The women were the victims. It was that simple. I felt this was my most important work yet. I was giving a voice to women who had been silenced by a legal system designed by men for men. The day it was published, the reaction was different. It was faster and much, much more hostile. It felt like I had kicked a hornet's nest. This time, the criticism wasn't just angry dudes on Twitter. It was organized. On places like Reddit, entire threads were dedicated to debunking my article. Men were posting their own divorce decrees, their bank statements, screenshots of their alimony and child support payments. They told stories of being financially ruined, of being alienated from their children, of false accusations used as leverage in court. They weren't just shouting. They were using data, court statistics, economic studies. They were using the very tools of logic and reason that they always claimed to value, and they were turning them against me. Of course, I knew it was all just a coordinated harassment campaign, a classic example of fragile masculinity lashing out. But it was getting harder to ignore. The comment section on our site was unusable. We had to shut it down completely on that article. For the first time, some of the negative feedback was bleeding into my bubble. A few prominent female journalists, women I respected, subtweeted about the importance of nuance and thorough reporting, even on difficult topics. They didn't name me, but I knew who they were talking about. It stung. Felt like a betrayal. A few days later, Meredith called me into her office. The smile was gone. She had a printout of an email on her desk. She told me that one of our biggest advertisers, a well-known brand that sells men's grooming products, had paused their campaign with us. Their marketing department had been flooded with complaints about my divorce article. They said they couldn't have their brand associated with what they called divisive and anti-male content. I was furious. I told Meredith this was exactly what the patriarchy does. When it can't win the argument, it uses money and corporate power to silence women's voices. This was a test of our principles. We couldn't back down now. Meredith didn't seem to see it that way. She looked tired. She told me that principals don't pay our salaries. She suggested that for my next article, maybe I could cover a less controversial topic. Or maybe, she said carefully, I could include a single quote from a man just to show we were being balanced. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Balanced, after everything I had accomplished, after I had single-handedly resurrected this publication's engagement numbers. I told her that including a man's perspective would compromise the entire mission of her story. It would be a betrayal of my readers. I told her I wouldn't do it. The meeting ended without a resolution. The air between us was cold. I walked back to my desk feeling shaken, but also defiant. I wasn't going to let some razor company dictate my journalistic integrity. I looked over at Elliot. He was typing away as usual. He glanced up, met my eyes for a fraction of a second, and then looked back down at his screen. I suddenly felt a flash of anger towards him and his safe, boring articles. He never took any risks. He never made anyone angry. He just plodded along, doing his balanced reporting, and no one ever threatened his advertising revenue. It felt deeply, profoundly unfair. That evening, I went home and opened my laptop. My support network, my activist friends, my loyal readers. They would understand. I wrote a long, passionate post on my social media. I didn't name Meredith or the advertiser, but I told my followers that powerful forces were trying to silence me. I wrote about the corporate cowardice that prioritizes profits over truth. I framed it as a battle for the soul of journalism. I called on my supporters to stand with me. I hit post and waited for the wave of support to roll in. For the first hour, it was exactly what I expected. Hundreds of comments of support, people telling me to stay strong, that they had my back. But then, something shifted. The post started to get shared outside of my bubble. The comments from my critics were bad, but I expected that. What hurt was the silence from people I thought were on my side. My activist friends, the ones who were so quick to praise me in private, weren't sharing the post. A couple of them sent me private messages saying things like, "This is a tough situation," or "Maybe you should lay low for a bit." They were scared. They didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. One of my colleagues from Apex, a woman I thought was a friend, even unfollowed me. I sat there, staring at my screen, feeling the walls of my echo chamber start to crack. The feeling of being on top of the world was gone. It was replaced by a cold, creeping sense of isolation. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. I had come too far. I decided to double down. I would write my next piece and it would be the most uncompromising one yet. I would show them all that I couldn't be silenced. I was still Rowan. I was the voice for the voiceless. And I was right. I had to be. I spent the next week locked in my apartment, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of injustice. I decide my next piece for her story needs to be my masterpiece. Something so undeniably true and powerful that it will make all this corporate backlash look pathetic. I choose my target, the military, the ultimate bastion of toxic masculinity. My angle is that military training doesn't just create soldiers, it creates broken men who bring their trauma and aggression back into civilian life, harming the women around them. The title is The Camouflage Ceiling: How Military Indoctrination Fuels Domestic Abuse. It's provocative. It's perfect. I find a few online articles, cherry-pick some statistics without their original context, and interview 3 women who were in relationships with veterans. Their stories are sad, of course, full of anger and frustration. I mold their experiences into a universal truth. I write that PTSD is often just a clinical term for unchecked male rage. I suggest that the discipline and hierarchical structure of the military is a breeding ground for controlling behavior in relationships. I don't speak to a single veteran. I don't contact any support organizations. I don't read any of the extensive research on combat trauma. That would be platforming the oppressor. It would pollute the narrative. I finish the draft and feel a grim satisfaction. This is the truth. It's ugly, but it needs to be said. I email it to Meredith with a simple subject line, next column. The response is faster than I expected. Less than 30 minutes later, I get a calendar invite. Urgent meeting, her office, now. I walk in and she's standing there, arms crossed. My article is on her computer screen. She doesn't ask me to sit down. Her voice is flat, all the corporate friendliness gone. She says this isn't an article, it's an ideological grenade, that it's irresponsible, factually thin, and needlessly cruel to a group of people who have been through hell. She tells me we are not publishing it, not a single word. I start to argue, to defend my work. I tell her she's letting her fear of controversy dictate editorial policy. She cuts me off. She says this isn't about controversy. It's about basic human decency and journalistic responsibility. She gives me an ultimatum. Either I scrap the piece and write a completely new one with balanced sources and verifiable facts, or I'm done. I look at her, this woman who I thought was an ally, and I see a coward, a gatekeeper, just another cog in the machine. The words just come out of my mouth before I can stop them. I tell her she's a traitor, that she's internalized the patriarchy so deeply she's now doing its dirty work for it. Her face goes cold, utterly blank. She picks up her desk phone and presses a button. Security to my office, please. It happens so fast. She tells me my employment with Apex Digital is terminated, effective immediately, for gross insubordination and creating a hostile work environment. I'm stunned into silence. 2 security guards appear at the door. They don't look at me. They just stand there. Meredith tells me I have 5 minutes to gather my personal belongings from my desk, and then I will be escorted from the building. I walk back to my desk in a daze. Everyone is staring. No one says a word. They just look at me, then quickly look away, as if my failure is contagious. I grab my favorite mug, a small plant, a framed photo. I shove them into my tote bag. As I'm being walked towards the elevator by the 2 silent guards, I see Elliot. He's standing by his desk, holding his coffee cup. He watches me pass. There's no gloating in his eyes, no satisfaction, just a quiet, tired kind of pity. That's almost worse than anything. The elevator doors close, and I'm gone. The first week is a blur of anger. I'm a martyr now, a casualty in the war for truth. I immediately set up a Patreon and a Substack. I write a long, fiery post titled, "Why I Was Fired for Telling the Truth." I lay out my whole story, painting myself as the victim of a corporate conspiracy to silence a powerful feminist voice. The post gets a lot of attention. My remaining hardcore followers are enraged on my behalf. Pledges start coming in on Patreon, a few $100, then 1,000. For a moment, I think this is going to work. I don't need the mainstream media. I'll build my own platform, but the momentum doesn't last. The outrage cycle moves on. There's a new scandal, a new person to be angry about. The pledges plateau, then start to trickle downwards as credit cards expire and people forget to renew. My Substack articles get fewer and fewer readers. It's hard to generate the same level of controversy without the backing of a large platform. My voice is just a shout in the wilderness. My activist friends keep their distance. They'll like a post occasionally, but they never share my work. I'm too radioactive now. Reality starts to set in. My savings are not infinite. I start applying for other journalism jobs. I must have sent out 50 applications to online magazines, local papers, even content marketing firms. I get 2 interviews. Both of them go the same way. It starts well. They like my portfolio, my earlier, less controversial work. Then comes the inevitable question. So, can you tell us what happened at Apex Digital? I give them my version of the story. The principled stand, the corporate censorship. They nod politely, their eyes glaze over. I can see them mentally labeling me difficult, toxic, a PR nightmare waiting to happen. I never get a second interview. After a couple of months, even the rejection emails stop coming. I'm just ghosted. The industry is smaller than you think. Everyone knows everyone. My name is poison. The money is running out. The rent is due. The freelance writing gigs I managed to get are low-paying and soul-crushing. 5 ways to style a scarf for fall. The best dog-friendly cafes in the city. It's humiliating. I finally have to admit defeat. I need a real job. Any job. I walk down the main street in my neighborhood and look at the help wanted signs in the windows. I end up getting hired at a coffee shop called The Daily Grind. The irony is not lost on me. My life becomes a routine of 6 a.m. alarms, the smell of burnt coffee, and forcing a smile for hundreds of strangers a day. My boss is a guy half my age with a man bun who calls everyone brah. My coworkers are college students and aspiring artists. They're nice enough, but we have nothing in common. I tell them I used to be a writer. I leave out the details. Sometimes customers recognize me. A woman in a business suit will squint and say, "Don't I know you from somewhere? Did you write for that website?" I just shake my head and say, "Sorry, you must be thinking of someone else." The shame is a physical weight. I, who wrote about powerful women breaking glass ceilings, am now wiping down sticky tables and cleaning out the milk steamer. This is the ultimate role reversal. I used to analyze the system from a position of intellectual superiority. Now, I'm just a tiny, invisible cog within it. My days are long and my thoughts are bitter. I blame Meredith. I blame the advertiser. I blame Elliot for making my work look extreme by comparison. I blame my fair weather friends. I blame everyone but myself. Admitting I was wrong would mean my entire worldview was wrong. And if that's the case, then what was it all for? The fights, the controversy, the career I torched, it would all be for nothing. So, I hold on to my anger. It's the only thing I have left. Months pass, maybe 6, maybe more. The seasons change. I'm working a slow afternoon shift. It's raining outside. The cafe is quiet. I'm wiping down the counter, lost in thought. A customer is sitting at a table by the window, his laptop open. He's wearing headphones, watching some kind of live stream. I can't hear the audio, but I can see the screen. It's a fancy event. A stage, a podium, people in formal wear. Some kind of awards ceremony. I recognize the logo on the banner behind the stage. It's for the National Journalism Awards, the most prestigious prize in the country. Out of idle curiosity, I keep glancing over as I work. They're announcing the winner for Best Social Commentary Reporting. The presenter is talking about a series of articles that shone a light on a silent epidemic and gave voice to a forgotten demographic with courage and empathy. They show a montage of images on the big screen, photos of tired-looking men in factories, on fishing boats, sitting alone in sparsely decorated living rooms. My stomach clenches. The presenter announces the name of the series, The Unheard, an investigation into the modern crisis of male loneliness. My heart sinks. I know what's coming next. The winner, the presenter booms, is Elliot. The camera cuts to the audience, to Elliot. He looks surprised, genuinely humble. He shakes hands with the people at his table and walks up to the stage. He accepts the heavy-looking award and steps up to the microphone. He thanks the publication. He thanks Meredith. Then he thanks the men who shared their stories with him, the truck drivers, the veterans, the divorced fathers. He says that the most important thing he learned was that behind the stoic silence that society expects from men, there is often a world of pain, and that the first step to solving any problem is to be willing to listen, truly listen, to everyone, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. The crowd gives him a standing ovation. I stand there, frozen behind the counter, a wet rag in my hand. The customer with the laptop is clapping along with the audience on his screen. I look down at my phone. The news is already breaking on Twitter. Oz Elliot wins. Y'all's real journalism. I see a tweet from one of my old activist friends, one of the ones who ghosted me. It's a link to the news with her comment, "This is so important. A masterclass in empathetic and nuanced reporting. We need more journalism like this." The hypocrisy is so staggering it almost makes me laugh. But I don't laugh. I just stand there in the quiet cafe, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. I look at the screen, at Elliot holding his award, the embodiment of everything I dismissed as weak and irrelevant. He didn't burn anything down. He didn't scream. He just did the work. He told the whole story, and he won. I feel nothing, no remorse, no epiphany, just a cold, hollow emptiness. The echo chamber I built for myself is gone, and the only thing left is the silence.